The sun was burning hot over Los Angeles when Ethan Cole parked his old pickup outside a mansion that looked like something from a movie. The address said Sunset Hills, and the name on the service order read Caroline Hayes. Ethan glanced at the massive gate, wondering what kind of person lived there. He'd been cleaning pools for 3 months, just trying to make ends meet after losing his small construction business. Pool cleaning wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills barely. He grabbed his gear and walked toward the backyard, feeling the sharp glare of the sun bouncing off marble tiles and glass walls. The pool sparkled like a mirror. Ethan started testing the water, keeping his head down when a soft voice startled him. "You must be the new pool guy." He turned around and froze for a second. A woman stood near the patio door, dressed in a white sundress that fluttered slightly in the wind. She looked elegant and calm, maybe in her early 40s, with dark hair tied neatly and an expression that carried both grace and sadness. "Yes, ma'am." "Ethan Cole," he said, adjusting his cap. "Just doing your weekly cleaning." She gave a small smile. "Good." The last one was more interested in sunbathing than scrubbing. Ethan chuckled nervously. "Don't worry, ma'am. I'm better with pools than people." That made her laugh softly, like she hadn't done that in a while. "You can call me Carolyn," she said, before walking back toward the patio, her heels tapping lightly on the stone. Ethan continued working, but his mind kept wandering. Everything about this place was too perfect. The trimmed hedges, the clean glass doors, the quietness that felt almost heavy. After an hour, Carolyn returned with a glass of lemonade. "You've been out here a while," she said. "You should drink something." He hesitated, then accepted it. "Thank you." "You didn't have to." "I know," she said with a faint smile. "But I wanted to." That simple kindness stayed with him. Every Thursday after that, Ethan found himself looking forward to her house. Sometimes she'd read by the pool. Sometimes she'd sit quietly with her tea and ask about his day. He'd tell her bits of his life, how he used to build decks before the business failed, how he was saving to start over. She listened, really listened, which was rare for him. One afternoon, the wind suddenly picked up while he was cleaning, and Caroline's wide-brimmed hat blew straight into the pool. Without thinking, Ethan dropped his tools and jumped in. He grabbed it and came out dripping wet, holding the soggy hat above his head. Caroline burst out laughing, her voice echoing around the patio. "You didn't have to dive in like that." He smiled, pushing wet hair out of his eyes. "Couldn't let a good hat go down." She was still laughing when she said, "You're ridiculous," but her tone was warm, almost tender. That moment shifted something. After that day, the air between them changed. She started offering him coffee after work, asking him to sit for a few minutes before leaving, inside her kitchen. Sunlight poured through large windows and soft music played from a speaker. Ethan noticed family pictures, her, a man, and a young woman. He pointed toward one. "Your family." Caroline nodded, her smile fading slightly. "That was my husband, Richard. He passed away 2 years ago. My daughter's away at college now. It's just me here." Ethan looked down at his cup. "I'm sorry." "Thank you," she said quietly. "You get used to the silence after a while. But some days it still feels too loud." He nodded. "I know that feeling. Lost my dad when I was 16. Mom worked double shifts after that. Quiet never really feels normal." For a long moment, neither spoke. The sound of the pool filter outside filled the silence. Caroline finally said, "It's strange, isn't it? How 2 completely different lives can have the same kind of emptiness." Ethan looked up and met her eyes. Maybe that's what makes people understand each other. Something in his tone made her pause, but she didn't reply. She just smiled faintly and said, "You're not like most people who come here." When he left that day, she stood by the doorway and said, "See you next week, Ethan." But her voice had changed softer, like his name meant something more now. Over the next few weeks, their rhythm grew natural. Ethan would arrive in the late morning, and Carolyn would be on the patio, reading or watering flowers. They talked about everything: music, books, old memories. She told him about how her husband had been a businessman. often traveling, and how their marriage had been full of distance before illness brought him home for good. He told her about the dreams he'd given up on when the economy turned bad, about how he used to build homes with his father before everything fell apart. She admired his honesty. He admired her strength. There was a quiet connection forming, something unspoken but real. One morning he noticed she seemed distracted. "Everything all right?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "My daughter's visiting next week. I haven't seen her in months. She doesn't like it when I hire help. Thinks I should sell this house and move somewhere smaller?" Ethan nodded. "It's hard for people to understand what home means to someone." Caroline looked at him for a long time. "Yes, you're right." Later that afternoon, as he was about to leave, she stopped him. "Ethan, thank you. You've made this place feel less empty." He smiled softly. "You've made my workdays something to look forward to." She laughed, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You're going to spoil me with kindness." "Maybe you deserve it," he said. That night, as he drove home, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about her. Not in a romantic fantasy, but in a human, deeply emotional way. There was something about Carolyn that drew him in, her quiet sadness, her strength, her laughter, that felt hard-earned. He didn't know where this connection was heading or if it was even right to think about it. But he knew one thing, for the first time in years. Someone had made him feel seen again, and neither of them realized it yet. But that small moment, the kindness, the laughter, the shared quiet was only the beginning of something that would test both their hearts in ways they didn't expect. The following week, Ethan pulled up to Caroline's mansion just as clouds began to gather over Los Angeles. The place looked different. Cars in the driveway, voices echoing faintly from the patio. He realized her daughter must have arrived. He parked, grabbed his tools, and walked toward the backyard. But before he could even set down his bucket, a young woman in her early 20s appeared, arms crossed and expression sharp. "Who are you?" she asked, almost defensive. "Ethan Cole. I clean the pool," he replied politely. She looked him up and down. "My mother's pool guy." Before he could answer, Caroline's voice floated from the house. "Emma, please. Don't scare him away." Caroline came out, smiling softly, though her eyes looked tired. "Ethan, this is my daughter, Emma." Ethan nodded. "Nice to meet you." Emma gave a small, forced smile and walked back inside, muttering something under her breath. Carolyn sighed. "Don't take it personally. She's protective, thinks I let strangers in too easily." Ethan smiled faintly. "It's fine. She's just looking out for you." Caroline nodded. "She's always been that way." Ethan started cleaning, but the air felt heavier than usual. Caroline tried to act normal, asking him about his week, but her smile didn't reach her eyes. At one point, Emma returned and stood by the door, watching them. Ethan pretended not to notice, but he could feel the tension. After finishing the cleaning, he went to say goodbye. "All done for today," he said. "Thank you, Ethan." Carolyn said warmly, "I'll see you next Thursday." Kima interrupted. "Actually, Mom, I think you should take a break from all this. You don't need to spend money on extra help. You can sell the house and live somewhere smaller." "Emma, no, Mom, seriously. You don't need this big place. You're just clinging to the past." Caroline's face fell. Ethan stepped back, not wanting to intrude. "I'll get going," he said quickly. But before he left, Caroline's voice stopped him. "Ethan, wait." She handed him an envelope. "For this week." "Thank you." Their eyes met for a brief second, hers full of unspoken sadness, his full of quiet understanding. He nodded and walked away. For the next few days, Caroline didn't call. He told himself it was fine. She was spending time with her daughter. But something inside him missed those small moments of connection. The laughter, the calm presence she brought. The next Thursday, he wasn't sure whether to show up, but habit and worry pushed him to drive there anyway. When he arrived, the house was quiet again. No cars in the driveway? He knocked lightly before heading to the backyard. And there she was, sitting by the pool, staring into the water. Her hands clasped around a cup of tea. "Hey," Ethan said softly. Didn't think you'd want me back after last week." Carolyn looked up and smiled faintly. "Emma went back to New York. She thinks I'm being stubborn. Maybe she's right." Ethan sat down on the edge of the pool, his reflection rippling in the clear water. "You're not stubborn. You just want to hold on to what feels like home. There's nothing wrong with that," she sighed. "You sound like my husband used to." Ethan looked at her gently. He must have been a good man. He was, in his own way. Work was his world. I don't blame him for it, but sometimes I wish we'd spent more time just living. She looked at Ethan then, her eyes soft but searching. "You remind me of what that felt like. Simplicity, honesty." He felt something stir in his chest, but he pushed it down. "I just try to do what I can." They sat in silence for a while. The breeze picked up, and Caroline wrapped her arms around herself. Without thinking, Ethan stood up and said, "You should go inside. It's getting cold." She smiled. "Come in for a minute. I made coffee." Inside, the warmth of the kitchen contrasted with the cool air outside. She poured 2 cups and handed him one. "You know, Ethan," she said after a pause, "I haven't had a real conversation like this in years. Everyone who comes here either wants something or keeps it strictly business. But you," she hesitated, "you make it feel normal again." Ethan took a sip, trying to hide the way his heart raced. "I think you just needed someone to listen." She nodded, eyes glistening slightly. "Maybe, or maybe I just needed someone kind." For the first time, there was a silence between them that felt full. Not awkward, but charged with something deeper. Ethan stood up, clearing his throat. "I should go." Caroline followed him to the door. "Ethan," she said softly, "thank you for being here." He turned back and met her eyes. "Always, Caroline." That night, she couldn't sleep. Every corner of the house reminded her of conversations, of laughter she thought she'd forgotten how to have. She realized Ethan had somehow brought life back into the quiet halls of her world. It scared her not because it was wrong, but because it felt alive again. The next few weeks, their bond grew deeper. They started talking about more personal things, fears, dreams, regrets. Ethan told her how he used to believe success meant having money, until he lost everything. Caroline told him how she'd once thought love meant never feeling lonely, till she learned loneliness could live even inside a marriage. One afternoon, as Ethan packed up his gear, Caroline stopped him. "Would you ever go back to building?" He shrugged. "If I had the chance? Yeah. It's what I love." She smiled. "Then maybe you should." He looked at her, surprised. "You sound like you believe in me more than I do." "Maybe that's because you remind me of who I used to be before life became about loss." Their eyes lingered for a second, longer than they should have. It was unspoken, but both knew the connection was real. Still, Ethan respected the boundary. He never crossed it, never said what his heart was starting to feel then. One evening, a storm hit. Heavy rain flooded parts of the yard, and Caroline called in a panic. "Ethan, the pool's overflowing and the drains are blocked." "I'm on my way," he said, grabbing his jacket. He arrived soaked, wind whipping through the trees. Without hesitation, he got to work clearing the drains, his hands numb from the cold. Carolyn stood under the porch, worried. "You don't have to do this right now." "I can't leave it like this," he shouted back. By the time he was done, both were drenched. She ran to him with a towel, her voice trembling. "You could have gotten sick." He laughed, shivering. "I've been through worse." She looked at him, her eyes full of emotion. "You risked this for me." "For the pool," he said lightly, but his voice gave him away. Caroline took a step closer. For a moment, it felt like the world stood still, just rain, wind, and 2 hearts caught between duty and something more. Then she whispered, "You shouldn't make me feel this alive again." He looked at her, speechless. "Maybe you were never meant to stop feeling alive." And just like that, the storm outside seemed too quiet, but the one between them had only begun. After that stormy night, something between Ethan and Caroline shifted. They didn't talk about what happened, but every look, every small silence carried something new, something unspoken yet undeniable. The next morning, Carolyn texted him for the first time instead of calling. "Thank you for last night. Hope you're feeling okay." Ethan replied simply, "I'm fine. Glad the house is safe." Okay. But his mind wasn't fine at all. He couldn't stop thinking about her, about how she looked at him in the rain. How her voice had trembled when she said he made her feel alive again. When he came by that week, the air felt heavier. Carolyn greeted him with her usual grace, but she avoided meeting his eyes. "You really shouldn't have come that night," she said softly. "It was dangerous. Couldn't leave you alone in that mess," he said. "Besides, someone had to fix it." She smiled faintly, but he could tell she was struggling. "Ethan," she said, "I don't want you to think I depend on you too much." He stopped cleaning and looked at her. "You don't. I just help out. That's all." Her gaze lingered. "That's not all, and you know it." The words hung in the air, quiet but powerful. Ethan didn't know how to respond. Carolyn looked away, then added, "It's just complicated." He nodded, understanding what she meant. She was older, married. Even if her husband was gone, the memories remained. Ethan wasn't looking to cross any lines. But his heart didn't understand boundaries the way his mind did. Over the next few weeks, they saw each other less. Carolyn canceled a few appointments, saying she was traveling to see her daughter. Ethan missed their talks, but he didn't want to pressure her. He kept working, focusing on other clients. Yet every time he drove past her neighborhood, his chest tightened. One afternoon, as he finished cleaning another client's pool, he got a message. "Back in town? Would you have time tomorrow?" He didn't even need to ask who it was. He replied instantly, of course. The next day when he arrived, Caroline looked different. There was something lighter about her, a new calmness. "How's the trip?" he asked. "It was needed," she said. "Emma convinced me to go on a short retreat. I thought about a lot of things, good things, hard things," she admitted. "But maybe that's what I needed." They talked less while he worked. It was as if both were afraid of saying too much. But before he left, she stopped him. "Ethan," she said, "would you stay for a moment?" He turned. "Sure. I wanted to tell you something," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "That night, the storm, I realized how much your kindness means to me. You reminded me what it feels like to be cared for without expectation. That's rare." Ethan nodded, his throat tight. "You deserve that, Carolyn." She smiled softly. "And so do you." There was a pause, gentle but heavy with emotion. She looked as if she wanted to say more, but instead she said quietly, "I'm thinking about selling this place." Ethan froze. "Selling?" She nodded. "It's time. I've been holding on to this house, this life, as if my husband was still here. But I need to move on, start fresh." He felt his chest tighten. "That's a big change." "I know," she said, "but it feels right. I'll miss the peace here and maybe the company too." Her voice softened at the end, her eyes meeting his. He smiled faintly. "I'll miss it too." After that day, Ethan didn't see her for nearly a month. He heard from one of her neighbors that the house was indeed being prepared for sale. Every time he thought of it, something inside him ached. He told himself it wasn't love, just admiration, respect. But deep down, he knew it was more than. One morning, while he was fixing a filter at another property, he received a call from an unknown number. "Ethan, it's Caroline." He straightened. "Caroline? I didn't expect." "I know," she interrupted softly. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to disappear like that. I just needed space to figure things out." "It's okay," he said gently. "You don't owe me an explanation." "I do, actually," she said. "You've been part of my life these last few months more than anyone else. And before I leave, I wanted to see you. One last time." He hesitated, unsure what to say. But his heart already knew the answer. "Tell me when," he said. "Tomorrow evening," she said. "Tomorrow evening," she said. "At the house. I'll be there." The next day, Ethan arrived just before sunset. The house was half empty, furniture gone, boxes stacked in corners. The pool sparkled in the fading light, perfectly clean, perfectly still. Caroline stood near the edge wearing a light sweater and holding 2 cups of coffee. "You came," she said softly. "I said I would." They sat by the pool, silent for a long time, listening to the soft hum of the water. Finally she said, "It's strange. I used to think this house would be my forever. But maybe forever isn't meant to be one place. Sometimes forever is just a moment that stays with you," Ethan said. She smiled sadly. "You always know the right thing to say." He shook his head. "Not always. Not when it matters most." Their eyes met, and the air between them felt fragile, like a secret that could break if either of them spoke too loudly. Caroline finally said, "Ethan, I'll be moving to Seattle next week. Emma found me a small house near her. It's the right thing to do." He nodded, his voice quiet. "That's great. You'll have family close by." "Yes," she said, "but I'll miss the peace here. And I'll miss you." Ethan swallowed hard. "I'll miss you too, Carolyn." The sky turned shades of pink and gold as the evening deepened. She reached into her pocket and handed him a small envelope. "For you," she said. He opened it and found a check far more than his usual payment. "Caroline, this is too much." "It's not money," she said softly. "It's gratitude. For reminding me what kindness feels like. For being part of my healing." Ethan looked at her, emotions swirling inside him. "I should be the one thanking you. You made me believe again that doing good, being honest, still matters." They sat together in silence for a while, neither wanting to say goodbye. Then Caroline stood and took a deep breath. "I should finish packing." He nodded, standing too. "I guess this is it then." Oh. She looked at him, eyes glistening. "No, Ethan, this isn't goodbye. Some people don't fade when they leave. They stay right here." She placed a hand gently over her heart. He smiled, though his eyes were wet. "Then I guess I'll see you again somewhere here." She laughed softly. "You will." He walked away slowly, turning back one last time to see her standing by the pool, the reflection of the sunset shimmering around her. In that moment, she looked peaceful, not lost, not sad, but free. And though Ethan's heart ached, he knew this was how it was meant to be. He didn't go back to her house again. But sometimes, when he cleaned other pools, he'd pause to watch the water ripple under the light. And in those quiet moments, he felt her presence gentle, grateful, and unforgettable. That night, Ethan finally realized that not all connections are meant to last forever. Some are meant to awaken something inside you, something you'd forgotten you still had. And that, in its own way, was love too. Months passed after Caroline left for Seattle. But her memory stayed with Ethan, like the quiet reflection of sunlight on still water. Every morning he drove past the neighborhood where her house used to be. And though someone new had moved in, his eyes always searched for traces of her. The garden she once tended, the white roses by the mailbox, the small wind chimes she loved that no longer hung by the porch. Ethan threw himself into work, taking more clients, traveling to nearby towns, trying to fill the emptiness her absence had left. Yet sometimes, while skimming leaves from a pool or testing the water's balance, his mind would drift back to her voice, calm, kind, filled with something that had changed him. She had taught him that love wasn't always about possession or promises. Sometimes it was about reminding someone of their worth and walking away when it was time. One afternoon, after finishing a long day of work, Ethan sat in his truck near the lake. He opened his phone, scrolled through old messages, and stopped at one from Caroline, a short one she had sent before leaving. "Keep your heart kind. Ethan, that's your real strength." He read it again, quietly smiling. That same evening, his phone buzzed. It was an unfamiliar number from Seattle. "Hello?" He answered. "Ethan," came a familiar, warm voice. "It's Caroline." He sat up straight. "Caroline, how are you?" "I'm good," she said softly. "The house here is smaller but cozy. Emma visits often. I'm at peace." "That's great," he said, his heart lifting. "You sound happy." "I am," she replied. "And I wanted to tell you something. The old house finally sold. The new owners love it. I thought it would make me sad, but it didn't. I think it's because of you. You helped me let go of the past." Ethan smiled. "You did that yourself. I just cleaned the pool." Caroline laughed gently. "You did more than that. You reminded me that kindness still exists and that love doesn't have to end to mean something." Her words lingered in his heart long after the call ended. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He stepped outside and looked at the stars, thinking about how strange life was, how two people could meet by chance and still leave such a lasting mark on each other. As weeks turned into months, Ethan continued building his small business. His reputation grew, not just for being reliable, but for the warmth he carried in every job. People liked him because he listened to their stories, their worries, their little joys. He didn't realize it. But the gentleness Carolyn had seen in him now defined how others saw him too. Then one spring afternoon, while cleaning a pool for a new client, he heard someone call his name. He turned, and there she was. Carolyn stood by the gate, smiling. "Carolyn?" he said, stunned. She nodded. "Surprised?" "Completely," he said, laughing. "I thought you were in Seattle." "I was," she said, walking closer. "But Emma got married last month, and I wanted to visit some old friends. I thought I'd stop by and see how you're doing." He wiped his hands on a towel, still in disbelief. "I'm good. Really good. Can see that," she said. "You look happy." "I am," he said truthfully. "Work's been steady, and I started helping a few small businesses in town. You know, fixing their equipment, teaching them maintenance tips. Keeps me busy." She smiled, genuinely proud. "You've built something for yourself, Ethan. That's wonderful." He nodded, still looking at her, trying to believe she was actually there. "And you?" "Still at peace." Carolyn looked around the yard, the water glinting behind him. "More than I expected to be. I thought leaving would close a chapter, but now I see it just changed how it reads." He smiled. "I understand." They sat under a nearby tree, catching up on everything they'd missed. She told him about Seattle, the rain, the quiet streets, how she joined a local art group. He told her about expanding his small company and mentoring a few young workers. It felt natural, easy, like no time had passed at all. After a while, she grew quiet. "Do you ever think about that night?" she asked softly. "The storm?" he said. "Sometimes." "I do too," she said. "Not because of the fear, but because of what it taught me. That we can't control how people come into our lives, only how we let them change us." Ethan looked at her. "And did I change you?" She met his eyes and smiled. "Completely." He didn't reply right away. The moment was tender but peaceful. They both knew what it meant and what it didn't. There was no promise of more, no hidden longing left. Just two souls who had shared something real, something that had shaped them both. As the sun dipped low, Caroline stood and brushed off her hands. "I should go," she said. "I have a flight tomorrow." Ethan nodded slowly. "Will you come back again?" "Maybe," she said with a gentle smile. "Or maybe not. But you'll always know where to find me in the good parts of your memories." He smiled, understanding. "And you'll be in mine." They hugged, brief, warm, and full of unspoken gratitude. When she walked away, Ethan didn't feel the same ache he once did. Instead, there was peace, the kind that comes when a story ends exactly as it should. That evening, he went home, poured himself a cup of coffee, and sat by his own small backyard pool. The water shimmered in the fading light. He looked at it and thought of how life flowed, how people came and went like ripples, leaving behind reflections that never really disappeared. The next day, Ethan received an envelope in the mail. Inside was a small photo, the two of them by the pool months ago, taken by Carolyn on that final night before she sold the house. On the back was a note in her elegant handwriting. "The people who cross your path are not accidents. Some are lessons. Some are blessings. You were both." Ethan smiled, holding the photo for a long time. Then he placed it in his wallet, not out of longing, but out of respect for what they'd shared. From that day on, whenever he worked under the bright sun or watched water glisten beneath his hands, he felt lighter. Love, he realized, doesn't always need forever. Sometimes it just needs to touch your soul once deeply enough to change how you see the world. And as he stood by another client's pool one evening, the sky painted in gold and blue, Ethan whispered quietly, "Thank you, Caroline." The wind stirred gently, brushing across his face almost like a reply. He smiled, turned toward the open road, and kept walking forward, his heart full, his spirit calm, and his life quietly changed forever.